What's up, everybody? That's your girl CC with Where It Begins magazine, and I got my co-host Theo on the line with us. Hey, Theo, how are you today?
I'm good, CC. What about you?
I am awesome. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Another round of some great interviews.
Yes. Well, we have a special guest on the line with us today. I'm gonna let him introduce himself of who he is, what he does, and where he's from.
Well, my name is Najee. I'm a jazz saxophonist and flautist. We say flautist in my industry, flute player, most people would say, but that's the dignified way of saying it. And that's pretty much it, Everything else you can find on Google.
Man is a legend. He says, Google me.
Yeah, there you go. Hard to hide anything.
Okay. I got you. But who or what inspired you to be into jazz in the jazz world?
Well, I'm a 70s kid. So I grew up during a time in New York City when playing in a band was the thing to do. So when I came out of junior high school and went to high school, I actually went to become an airline pilot. I went to a school in New York City called August Martin High School, which was a high school dedicated to the aviation industry, but specifically in the neighborhood of the African-American community of Jamaica, Queens, New York. Now, Jamaica, Queens, New York is also where Donald Trump is from, but he's from the north side of Jamaica. I'm from the south side of Jamaica, Queens. And so we went to study, I went there to become a pilot. However, one turning event in my life was in high school because I played saxophone. I was chosen to be the soloist in the jazz band. And I took my very first solo in front of all the people at the age of 15. And after that, all the girls knew my name. So I had a quick career change right there and then. That's what got me into jazz. But specifically how I got into jazz was through my mother, who was a jazz fanatic. She was a West Indian lady that loved jazz. She loved all kinds of music. So growing up, it was part of my history. And when I got to high school, I had the great opportunity to study at Jazzmobile in New York City at the time under the tutelage of the late Dr. Billy Taylor, who had hired Jimmy Heath and Frank Foster and all these great jazz musicians at that time to train young musicians like myself as a teenager for $5 a year. I was part of the Jazzmobile program at that time. So.
Okay, well, awesome. But I definitely want to get into your new album. Can you tell us more about the new album and the motivation behind it?
Yeah, well, the current album I have out is called, gosh, what's the name of it? I hate to say it. Center of the Heart. And the reason is because I just finished a new album, which is coming out May 13th. And that one is called Savoir Faire. So that new album is really just a commitment I made to a record company that I've been in business with for the last probably 15 years now. And this is the newest project coming out. So we have guest appearances by Allison Williams, who's one of the Def Jam R&B artists that's been with them for many years. And Frank McComb, about 1/3 of the album was done in Brazil, actually in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. We did a remake of the classic song of Antonio Carlos Jobim, La Felicidade, which was a very famous song back in the 60s. So got a lot of good stuff going on there.
Okay, and before Theo go into his question, on this new album that's coming out in May, what is your favorite song on there?
I don't have one.
And why did you choose that song?
Well, I don't really have a favorite song. As a musician, I've played with so many people. I've done so much over my 50 years of being a solo artist now. Well, 32 years being a solo artist. But prior to that, I played with many people you've heard of, like Chaka Khan. I toured with Prince for 3 years, recorded with him as well. And many other R&B and jazz groups. So, songs become, if you will, you go in with the mindset of just giving with the song what it requires. There's really after a while, there's no real favorite or non-favorite. You just do
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Theo.
No, I just want to take you back to the beginning a little bit. Obviously, you said your mom was a jazz enthusiast.
Yes.
Also, it seems like the local community was rooted in a lot of that jazz culture.
Yes.
But so, excuse me. So was that, growing up listening to it, is that kind of the reason, or what, the first time you heard jazz, what made you say, okay, this is the genre I want to go into?
You know what? I don't know if it was ever a conscious decision to go into it. Okay. I just decided to be a musician. And with that, the culture I grew up in New York City, back then, young musicians were trained to perform in big bands, be able to get work doing TV or any other kind of theater work, in the theater district in New York City. Or in the case of a lot of my teachers, a few of my teachers, they played, one teacher I had at Manhattan School of Music for flute. He was the lead flute player for the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, So you were trained to be able to do all kinds of music. Jazz, because I played the saxophone, is automatically associated with that, For example, my very first 4 albums, in my opinion, they were R&B records with the saxophone, and those albums charted on R&B as well as jazz and got great chart position, a lot of record sales, but the world called me jazz, you know what I mean? Even though I didn't think I was recording jazz records, because it's quite a difference, If you hear me play with Quincy Jones, or you hear me play with in a big band, or like an album I did live at the Greek with Stanley Clarke and Billy Cobham, who were jazz musicians, it's a whole different mindset from what I did on record, So it was never really a conscious decision to play just jazz. It was really my experience, even though I was trained in jazz, I was trained in classical, my experience in New York was R&B for the most part, and Latin and other forms of music. It was really basically whatever you were called to do. You had to be able to step in and you hear me play with Prince, it sounds like I can play rock and roll, I mean? So, it depends on what you
switch it up.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to ask about your time with the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, like as far as, your style and meshing in, but it sounds like you're very versatile and can kind of get in wherever they need you.
Yeah, well, I never personally played with the New York Philharmonic. My father was a very prominent classical musician who did play with New York Philharmonic, and he did play with the San Francisco Symphony, the New York Met, and he was a member of the NBC Orchestra. But I'm sad to say I never knew him because he died when I was very young. But he was well respected in the classical. I personally have never, the only time I've ever worked with orchestras was in the studio, or on one occasion with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. I was invited to join them, but never as a career, like, okay, I'm going to be this classical musician, and then, no, I was the kind of guy that wanted to do it all, because even though I like playing jazz and I like playing classical music, I like to be hit hard sometime too, I want to, you come to my show, we get funky, you know what I'm saying? So it's part of my history.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let me ask you this, because my parents are familiar with you. I kind of grew up hearing some of your music. So when CC said you were on the docket, I was, as soon as she said the name, I knew who she was talking about. I had to double check to make sure I didn't get confused with somebody kind of using the name similar to you, but I kind of had a basis to go on. So being in the industry for so long, what would you kind of say you've seen as kind of the progression or difference in jazz or in your style from when you started to now?
Well, it's a different culture. I mean, back when I came in my very first solo album came out in 1986 on Capitol EMI Records. Now, back then, I was one of the artists that was very fortunate as a jazz saxophonist to be able to get the media attention. So I was fortunate to get on shows like Good Morning America. I was on BET a lot. Back then, BET had Donnie Simpson, Video Soul, but here I am, a jazz artist on Video Soul. So they'll have me on and then they'll have New Edition on, you know what I mean? They'll play your videos. They got me as a jazz artist, then you get, you might get Whitney Houston behind me or, so a lot of things have changed in terms of that. It's not as easy to get that kind of media time. And, back then the metrics, the way records were sold is quite different. We had record stores. We had, what we call retail back then, where people were actually going and browse record stores and they may hear Najee playing over the speaker and people would say, hey, who's that? So here I am, an artist that's had sales as high as 15,000 a week. Now, if an artist in the jazz world sells 1,000, he's considered a superstar in jazz, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we had a decline in sales down to 5,000 a week. We were unhappy about that because we saw an obvious change, you know? So it's a different way of selling records. Ever since Napster began in the 90s, where people can download music for free, all the way through iTunes and all these things that changed the whole game and how it's operated, and basically how music is sold. So,
gotcha. So, what is your advice to the young person who's currently taking up instruments, learning the craft, and finding that passion and love like you did? What is the main advice you would give to them, knowing how the segment has kind of changed over the years?
Yes, I would honestly, I find that the best thing an artist can do is be themselves. Try to recognize what their voice is and what they are naturally able to do, and develop that. I'll give you a classic case. As a young jazz saxophonist, as a kid, I always wanted to sound like Grover Washington Jr. At one time, I wanted to sound like John Coltrane. David Hammond came along. I wanted to sound like him. And I could play all those things technically speaking, but at the end of the day, I still sounded like Najee, you know what I mean? So I quickly learned later on in the years that, stop trying to be other people, because people buy you for your voice. So I always say to young musicians, establish, and it doesn't matter what your ability is, because your ability can grow to become who you are, but recognize who you are and not be afraid to market that, define that. The other thing is, we live in a different world now. Now it's easier to promote your sound and yourself with all the utilize all the tools available to you. You got YouTube, you got Facebook, you got TikTok, you got all these things where you can become a video star now, and really gain your metrics. Because the world is not concerned about how many records you can sell now as much as they are about what your metrics are, you see. So if you got 1 million followers on YouTube, man, you're doing very well,
Yeah. So. Yeah, you hear a lot of that crossover, trying to replicate the instrument sounds to the Biggie song or whatever hip hop.
Right. and everybody's heard Biggie, you know what I mean? So
right.
I know artists who try to be Stevie, they tried to be Prince, and they weren't successful because you can't be what they become, So
yeah, but who were you compared to most coming up earlier in your career?
Early in my career, I think people tried to make comparisons. In the very beginning, they tried to compare me to Kenny G, who had probably 4 or 5 records out before I actually went on the scene. George Howard was another one they compared me to, Grover, and really, I think those comparisons were made on the commercial appeal of what I was doing, and the success that they had, but not because we sounded alike. None of us sounded exactly like each other. Everybody had their own voice. But because of the commercial appeal and who was buying the records, they always put you in a category of, well, this is like George Howard, or this is like Kenny, or, Grover, or whoever,
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I don't know a lot of people personally into that segment, but I would imagine it's kind of like the culture in a lot of the music segments where there is competition amongst the peers.
Of course, yes.
When you heard those comparisons, how did that motivate you?
You know what? I had a great respect for those people. I mean, they were in the marketplace. Now, people will say that when I came on, the industry, that jazz market opened up, because out of the box, my first album went gold, quickly. That's not common for a jazz artist. Gold is more like R&B rap status, So for an artist, this guy Najee, who was a Najee out of New York City saxophone player, and he goes gold, it was quite and become a household name at that time in the late 80s, was really quite a feat. So I don't know if I ever really tried to listen to that noise. I just did what I did, and it worked. And I was very blessed to make a connection with the audience that started to listen to me, And I have to admit that audience in the beginning was really an R&B audience. There were some jazz people, but it was really an R&B audience because I created R&B records with the saxophone. And that market, I just happened to be, the timing was just great for me, So.
Okay.
Those associations, Freddie Jackson, in the late 80s was doing a lot of big arenas and stuff. And he invited me to join his tour, opening for him. And here I am playing these big arenas and maybe playing only 15 minutes a night. but from that, my career just blossomed, you know. So that was a big opportunity for me back then. Yeah.
And that's awesome. That is awesome. But other than the album that's coming out, what can we expect for you for this year, for 2022?
Oh, well, we're touring, you know, now post-COVID, things are starting to open up a little bit. So we're on quite a few festivals this year. I'll be, you know, in different cities. You can go to najeeofficial.com. We usually post what's coming up for me. And so we're going to be all over. We have, I mean, my concert performances can go from medium-sized clubs to big arenas. You know, in one case, we have one big show coming up with Boyz II Men, you know, one with Kem, you know, and different festivals. And then I'll do a European tour in, when is that? In the May. I'll be going over to the British Isles and all those places. So, you know, I do a bunch of stuff. And so, you know, that's my life.
International man. Good stuff.
Didn't start out that way.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So being in the industry for so long and having so many accomplishments, what's left? What's left that you want to do that you haven't done up until this point?
You know, I am fortunately, and I'm very grateful to Almighty God for this, is that I'm at the legacy stage of my career. Okay. I've been blessed to work with everybody I could have never imagined. You know, I mean, as a kid, we used to listen to people like Billy Cobham and Stanley Clarke and Al Jarreau and Shaka Khan, and we'd look at them on the record labels, on the album covers, and I would have never imagined that I would actually be in their bands or playing alongside of them as headliner or any of that stuff. You know, I mean, even when Prince came along in the 80s, I mean, he came along during the Dirty Mind and the Purple Rain and all that. I never thought we would ever be associated in any kind of way. Yeah. So I've kind of lived all my dreams, honestly. I mean, working with George Duke, you know, touring and recording with him and so many other people. At this point, I'm really just concerned about just protecting the legacy of what's going on, you know, so yeah.
Gotcha. Good stuff. Good stuff. It's good to hear that. It sounds like you kind of have lived out your dreams.
Yes,
you know, everybody starts that path wanting to do that, and seldom few get to make it there, or seldom few are blessed enough to stick around to
well, I was going to say that, you know, I know it sounds like I just came out of nowhere and everything just popped me. It wasn't as simple as that. It was, you know, I went through my struggles, very, very deep struggles. And there were points in my life where I thought I would have never been doing this. You know, I mean, I was telling a friend of mine how, you know, I'm here in Boston tonight. I don't know if you can see the skyline, but today I'm in Boston. And this city is very special to me because I went to college here at the New England Conservatory of Music here in Boston. And during that time, you know, after about 3 years, I couldn't afford to go. I decided, well, you know what, I'm gonna sell my horns, you know. And I went into banking, you know, and just to support my family at the time, you know, and you know, the young wife I had at the time, she was not feeling this whole music thing, you know, even though she met me doing it. But, you know, I decided to make a sacrifice, if you will. And I sold my instruments. And then one day I happened to be passing by my old school, the conservatory, and I run into one of my classmates and he says, man, I haven't seen you in school. Where you been? He says, I said, well, you know, I've been, I decided to give up music. I don't think it's for me. He's like, what? He's like, no, I don't buy it, man. No way. There's people I know that would be the case, but not you. He said, you sold your horns? I said, yeah, man, I sold my instruments, blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, I don't accept it. He said, you meet me here tomorrow. I'm going to give you a sax. He was a piano player. I'm going to give you a saxophone I have, and I'm going to start calling you for work. True story. So I met him the next day. He gave me his alto saxophone he had, and he started calling me for all these, what we call general business gigs here in Massachusetts, you know, like bar mitzvahs, those kind of things, corporate gigs. And I started making so much money then that I quit the bank, you know.
Wow.
Of course, my wife at the time wasn't happy with it, so she quit me. But
oh wow.
Story. But the point is if it's for you, it's for you. You know, there's this saying you might have heard where they say some people meet their destiny while on the road trying to avoid it. You know what I mean? So I can say honestly, that's been the case. But yes, I've gone through quite a few struggles before ever read, you know, all this stuff you read about now, you know.
Well, good stuff. I'm glad you didn't give up on that journey. And,
yes, sir.
Yes.
Today, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Do you think about doing a book?
You know what? Funny thing that you should say that, because people have been saying, you know, I need to really catalog all my experiences. I mean, you know, from the fact that I've been blessed to play for Nelson Mandela, or to have played for ex-President Clinton at the White House, and things I could have never imagined as a kid growing up in New York City. If you had told me as a 15-year-old that this was going to be your destiny, I would have never been able to imagine that. But yeah, I think I do want to record memoirs, because at some point, every famous person in our industry, we've touched Pat's somewhere, you know. I mean, the fact that I've recorded rap artists, even like Dougie Fresh or Curtis Blow, y'all might not even remember them, but Big Daddy Kane and Guru, and, you know, worked with Pharrell and, you know, all these great people. And you know, but then I go work and record and play with Nancy Wilson or, you know, Quincy Jones. And, you know, so it's like, man, it'd be great to just categorize all this stuff and tell the story, you know, at some point. So.
Yeah, you got to put the book out so we can get to the movie.
There you go.
Yes, yes. You already got us as fans. We already gonna get it. We already gonna go and support. We there.
You know, I have no desire to be that guy, but I think honestly, if people benefit from the story, you know, I talked to quite a few young people and I've seen them benefit from some of the things I do share from time to time. So, yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Okay. Good. Well, we have a trivia game that we do at the end. So, Theo, you want to go with yours first, or you want me to go?
I can go first. So obviously,
okay, go ahead.
Obviously, we know the legend, right? Like very few people on this earth can walk around and just have one name represent them. So you had Najee, you know, that put it out there. Everybody knows who it is when you say it. But if that wasn't your artist name, what would it be?
Oh, I don't know. I used to go by the name Jerome Rashid, but that wasn't very sexy. Najee is my middle name.
Okay.
You can even listen, you know, when I go to Japan, people seem to find stuff that I recorded on years ago, and they find that name, but it doesn't work. You know, it's like when I signed my friend, all my friends knew me as Najee. So when it was time and I did my very first album, you know, the record company was like, listen, you know, it was back during the time when Sade, you know, Prince, and the list goes, Anita Baker became Anita, Luther Vandross became Luther, you know, so went with the one name and it worked. It's like, you know, marketing wise, it was a brilliant thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. Like I said, it's universally known. So.
Oh yeah.
Good choice.
Sure.
CC.
So mine is, if you could have any superpower, what would it be, and why did you choose that superpower?
Superpower?
Yes.
I don't know. That's a good one. I would love to be invisible. No, I don't want to say that. I'm putting that in the universe. I'm not trying to be that. But if I had to choose one, I think that's what I would want to be, you know, just a quiet observer of life and people. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, another question is, what advice would you give to your younger self if you could talk to your younger self?
Oh, that's a loaded question, but there's a lot of advice I would give to my younger self. I mean, you know, I think if I had to narrow it down to one thing though, don't underestimate the power of decision. You know, that I wasn't a kid that grew up and had a father that said, listen, you make these decisions, each decision you make in your life comes with a consequence. Mm-hmm. It can come with a good consequence or it can come with a bad one, but a consequence is part of whatever you do. You know, if you decide to change lanes in the road, you know, if you make it at the wrong time, you can have a bad consequence, obviously. So I think if I had to give any advice, I would say, you know, listen, think before you act, you know, because as a young person, we all are born impatient. Patience is not something that's given to us, it's something we acquire and learn. And that's through experience and through wisdom. And I think I would probably advise myself, just be patient, you know, think before you act. You know, and don't do things based on emotion. Do things based on the brain. The brain is up here, so it's the first thing you should listen to.
Oh, good advice.
I take those gems.
Yeah. No, I think babies are born now without patience, so that might be a hard sell. But
well, it's true. It's, I mean, human beings, we're impatient creatures, but you know, it's really something you have to work on. You know, yeah. So. Yes,
I agree. Is there anything else you have for him, Theo, before we get off?
No. Outside of music, are there any projects or anything else we can look forward to in 2022?
Well, you know, I'm always involved in something. You know, I was just asked on a recent interview to be an ambassador for the for jazz, and the connection with some of the African programs that are going on in places like Sierra Leone, Ghana, and other places. So I'm excited to hear more about that and be a part of those type of things. You know, obviously, I've always been dedicated to educational efforts of people, and so I think as time goes on, I would love to do more of those kind of things. You know, other than that, every year we have a tour schedule. You know, that's pretty routine now at this stage of my life. You know.
Good stuff.
Well, we definitely gonna go ahead and talk that book and that movie out there too.
Yeah.
We're gonna go ahead and work on that.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
We putting that in the universe.
Universe. There you go. That's where it all starts. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. But tell everybody where they can follow you, all your social medias and your website.
Yes, very simple. Najee Official for both Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and my website, najeeofficial.com. I think the official page of Facebook as well, Najee, the official page. There's a lot of Najees out there. There are a lot of people claiming my name in the industry, but you know, there's only one of me, obviously. You know,
That's
so
right.
Najee Official, you put that in, a whole bunch of stuff will come up.
It is. Everybody type in Najee Official, go to his website, and I'm sure you'll get linked up to be able to catch up with the greatness.
Yeah. Oh, you're very kind. Thank you.
Well, you know I'm gonna go on there. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Theo.
No. You said you were about to go on there. You about to plug in.
No, I said I'm gonna go out there because I need to know when he gonna be in Atlanta so we could go and support and go see him.
We'll be coming. You got to be sure to invite you out. Both. You're in Atlanta too, Theo. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you guys see my show. I'll be at the Mabel House this summer. I don't know the exact date, but you know, you guys are welcome to come. I'll put you on my list. Okay.
Gotcha.
So just got to remind me. However you got in touch with me, just remind me. And I'll do that.
Okay. Well, thank you for the invite.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good.
But I definitely want to say thanks for interviewing with us today. It's been a pleasure to get to know you better and learn your journey. You know, you're a legend in our eyes. And I always like to say, you got a fan here with me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
really
thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you from me as well. It's always, you know, a blessing to be in the presence of a legend. So you've done a lot of things.
I'm like, who is that guy? I'm trying to look at what are you talking about? No, but you know, it's always an honor when young people like yourself really take the time to get to know some of us who've done things in the past out of your generation, you know. So I'm really honored that you've taken the time to spend time with me today. I feel honored.
No, I could have told them Najee Official on everything for you, because that's definitely the best way to find your information. But yeah, thank you for taking time out. We definitely wish you much love, much success. Continued in 2022 and beyond. We definitely look forward to checking out the new release when that comes out, and definitely, man, keep being great. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you both.
All right. Well, you have a great day.
I'll see you this summer, hopefully. Okay.
Oh, yes. Trust me. I'm a big supporter. As long as I'm in town, I'm coming.
All right. Be well. Great.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Be well. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a great one.
You too.